hello and welcome once again to Beat the Reset. My name is Tim and I am the guy in the hat. And today I wanted to talk to you about ISO20022 technologies as well as real-world asset tokenization as we transition into this incredible new world. Now, before I go there, the question is, why is this important? Why is a commodities guy, instead of talking about precious metals, which of course is my favorite topic, starting to talk about real-world asset tokenization and MX currencies known as ISO20022s? And the answer to that is because we need to be able to trade, and we need to be able to trade against a central bank digital currency that is coming, a programmable central bank digital currency, by the way. We currently use fiat currency in the form of the Australian dollar in my own country, but of course it's pegged to the world reserve currency as we speak, as of today. As of March 2024, the world reserve currency is still the US dollar. And the question is, what happens beyond the US dollar? And it's rather obvious that we are seeing the rise of digital assets. We are seeing the move towards a central bank digital currency, of course. And it's a programmable currency, which I think is highly problematic for anybody that is looking to preserve wealth or to become wealthy. I don't see central bank digital currencies as a system that will enable you to have any wealth at all. And I think this is going to become highly problematic. And people are going to realize this, especially the middle classes, who are largely unaware and have little knowledge of central bank digital currencies and what they are and what they're designed to do. So it's very important that we have something called diversification. So right now, as we enter this global financial reset, there's a few things we need to consider. First of all, where we've come from, where we are right now, and where we are going. And this will enable us to assess something called risk. And furthermore, it will also enable us to diversify. Once we've assessed that risk, we'll also be able to consider our diversifications. Should we be buying more real estate, for example? Should we invest in stocks, shares, equities, bonds, annuities? Should we perhaps buy that new European late model car? Should we take on more debt? These are the questions that we really need to ask. Should we be invested within the commercial banking system? Should we have more funds or less funds in the commercial bank? So once you start assessing risk and once you start understanding where the world is potentially going from a financial perspective, it leads you to the answers that I'm going to be talking about here right now, and that is, of course, ISO 20022 technologies, which are monetary system, essentially central bank system technologies. They are largely known as MX technologies. So let's just start there, and then we'll get on to real world asset tokenization. So ISO really stands for the International Standards Organization, or by its original name, which is the International Organization for Standardization. They are fundamentally a globalist organization formed in 1947, 2 years after the United Nations was formed. They are predominantly a team or a board that decides the direction of the planet from a standards point of view. They standardize everything. So one of the globalists, again, it sits under the banner of the United Nations, so it is a globalist organization. And the code that we're talking about today is ISO 20022. And that code is largely been designed because data is the new gold for the central bank system. They want to know everything about everything, basically, is what they are really decided here. Now, the old system, which was the SWIFT system, which was formed in 1973, the SWIFT system used to use a messaging system that was known largely as MT, the letter M and T for Tim. And that system could transfer data across the wholesale central bank system, in other words, information about transactions, but it was very limited. Now, as we enter this new digital age and as we enter this incredible age of, I guess, smart grids and AI control grids, it turns out that the central bankers are very interested in finding out more about transactions, all types of things about transactions. And the only way they could do that was come up with a system that was able to hold more information about each transaction. And this is where ISO 20022 has come into play. Now, this particular ISO was designed and developed by the International Organization for Standardization way back 20 years ago. 20 years ago in 2004. Here we are in 2024. So the messaging system is written in unified modeling language or extensible markup language, and what it's designed to do is designed to create something called rich data transfers. In other words, more information about each particular thing that's happening within the transfer. The great thing, I guess, for the central bankers and what they've achieved here with this standard is people can buy into. So when I say people, interested parties can buy into the data sets and actually request specific data spikes. You know, they might want to know the surnames of the people that are buying. They might want to know the nationalities of who's transferring. They might want to know the age group. They might want to know what they're purchasing, when they purchased, what their GPS coordinates were, what the temperature was, how much did they spend, what was their maximum spend, what was their minimum spend. Now, of course, all of this is going to be very, very easy to track and trace, especially if we end up with something called digital IDs. You know, many people have been talking about digital IDs, but what people don't understand is we already have one. We have two forms of digital IDs already. One of them is in the form of your birth certificate. Another one is in the form of your tax file number. Beyond that, you have things like driver's license numbers and passports, which use the primary key. The primary key predominantly is either the birth certificate number, your BCN, or your TFN, your tax file number. So these are already ways that the central bankers and governments and so on can track and trace you without too much issue. So again, ISO 20022. Now within that class, the ISO 20022, what you will find is that there are tokens that have been basically developed by corporations for the purposes of facilitating this system. Now, the tokens, I'm going to read some of them out to you so you understand why I'm saying this today, because I believe these tokens are very valuable. They may not be valuable right now, but in time they will become valuable, and especially leading into 2025 and especially towards November 2025 when these tokens are largely going to be used holistically by the wholesale central bank system. So some of the tokens that I'm talking about here within this ISO class, also known as MX currencies, are XRP, which of course is a product of Ripple, XLM, which is a very, very cheap way to move digits around on the blockchain. Now, just going back to XRP just momentarily, XRP is one of the fastest cross-border interoperable platforms and technologies on the globe, transferring global currencies through escrow smart contracts within probably around about 2 to 3 seconds, cutting out the middleman and, of course, moving us away from the old automated clearinghouses that used to cause the huge delays in transfers between the consumer banks and the central banks and so on and so forth. So XRP largely facilitates this, and of course it's also an MX approved, if you like, or verified technology. So XRP, XLM. Then we have the Internet of Things, known as IoT or IOTA. Now, the Internet of Things is largely the smart grid, the self-managed analysis reporting technology grid, which, of course, aggregates all data to a data warehouse. Then beyond that, we have ADA, which is Cardano, which is largely, again, blockchain technology. Algorand. We have, of course, Hedera, which is HBAR, is their token. That's the letter H with BAR. Largely, this token has the ability to drive things like the carbon credit system. Quant, when you have a close look at Quant, it has some underpinning of the digital twin cities technology. So Quant seems to be largely driving part of the digital twin cities. And if you're not sure what that is, you can go back over some of my previous podcasts regarding this. Then we have Verge, XVG, and then of course Xinfin, which is XDC. So these are really the technologies that are MX technologies, which I think are great investments for a long position. So, of course, Bitcoin is the flavor of the month, as always. So is Ethereum. Ethereum is a fabulous technology. fabulous blockchain technology. In fact, a lot of the real-world asset tokenization will be built upon the Ethereum blockchain. But in reality, if you're looking at central bank payment systems, and especially heading into 2025 and up to November 2025, really you can't go past ISO20022s as long positions. Yes, they are volatile. Yes, they are up and down. How they stack against Bitcoin at the moment, yes, they're very, very different. But the beautiful thing about these MX technologies is they have incredible use case. They're not just speculative assets. And I believe that holding, and my personal opinion is, if you're going to hold what we call disruptive assets, assets that are not really managed and driven by the central bank system. The central bank system wants you to use fiat currency. They want you to use a central bank digital currency. But of course, what I want for you is very, very different. I want you to have autonomy, and I want you to have the ability to be able to trade independently and without restriction. So we need to be looking at disruptive technologies. Now, of course, this is all in addition to holding commodities, because, of course, I'm a commodities guy through and through, and my greatest advocation, of course, before we get to digital assets is always going to be physical gold and physical silver, with a strong lean into physical silver. Now, beyond MX currencies, I did mention that I'd like to talk about real-world asset tokenization, and BlackRock in March of 2022 recently came out and spoke about some of the technologies that are going to drive real-world asset tokenization. Tokenization is essentially taking all assets on the globe and splitting them into parts, dividing the assets into two types of tokens. One's going to be called a security token, the other is called a utility token. The security token will enable you to invest in something and buy parts of it, whereas the utility token will enable you to, through a smart contract, to actually have some form of ownership for the purposes of actually trading and selling the entire asset. Now, there are really 5 technologies that I would love you to have a look at, and I think they're going to be brilliant technologies as an early adopter to get into these technologies, because largely this real-world asset tokenization system is going to have massive market capitalization. I would say, could even rival something like foreign exchange, which is incredibly huge, because everything's going to be tokenized. Everything from essentially currencies to parklands, cultural assets, real estate, commercial real estate, everything is going to be tokenized. In other words, going to be split into digital components and then traded on Wall Street. So there'll be no ownership specifically of anything, and everything will be essentially, all assets will be equally shared amongst investors. So your funds will largely be, rather than having an asset and selling it like you used to in the traditional older system, what you will do is buy parts of an asset through something called tokenization. So the question is, which platforms and which tokens would be worth looking at? I'm going to give you 5 of them. Now, these are all, of course, underpinned by BlackRock. Now, when BlackRock speaks, you need to sit up and listen, regardless of what your view is on BlackRock. You can look at BlackRock as being the most dystopian institution on the globe, but they have a $10 trillion asset fund. They have enormous power within the markets. They are part of what I call the Golden Triangle. The Golden Triangle is the central bankers at the top who fund everything, the corporations on one side which build everything, and then, of course, the United Nations which control everything. So BlackRock is one of the biggest of the corporations, and when Larry Fink comes out and talks, you need to really listen, and this is what they're telling you. The following technologies are really what you need to be paying attention to as far as real-world asset tokenization goes. POLYX is one of them, POLYX. We have PROPC, known as PropChain, PROPS, Centrifuge, which is CFG, and of course ONDO Finance, which is ONDO. I'll just say that again. Polymesh, also known as POLYX. PROPC, PROPC, which is PropChain, PROPS. Then you have Centrifuge, which is CFG, and ONDO Finance. Now, these assets are huge bull markets at the moment, and it's only just the beginning. I see massive upside for both MX technologies. I see massive upside for anything within this class here, the RWA tokenization, real-world asset tokenization. I see massive upside from MX technologies because they are underpinned by globalists. I see massive upside for RWA tokenization because it's underpinned by BlackRock, and these people are giving the huge thumbs up to these kind of asset diversifications. So again, once again, rather than look at these technologies like they are dystopian and that, you really should avoid them. What you've really got to consider is, on one side of this, you're going to store your wealth in commodities, gold and silver, but then you need some kind of exit strategy to trade out. When you liquidate, you can't liquidate to central bank digital currencies primarily. I mean, there will be the chance to do that, but that may not be the best option, and certainly, in my opinion, something I would not really want to be considering terribly often. I think disruptive technologies all the way for me, personally, if I was going to liquidate out of an asset like precious metals. So precious metals will store your wealth, and ISO20022s or MX trading currencies or MX central bank currencies will be underpinned by the globalists. They are fabulous. There are 9 of them. As I said, I've mentioned them earlier. Then you've got the RWA tokenized, platforms, POLYX, PROPC, PROPC, CFG and ONDO. So these are things that I highly recommend you get into. That's it for me, of course, just for today. I thought I'd give you the heads up on some sort of diversification of your assets, which I think is absolutely critical to consider. So don't worry about your personal views. Don't worry about what you hear about BlackRock. Don't worry about what you hear about all these globalist organizations. The point is they are making big moves and you need to be part of this wealth shift. If you don't do this, all that's going to happen is you will stay in fiat currencies. Your currency will be debased and you'll end up in 2 things: central bank digital currencies, and you may even end up, if you're unfortunate enough, not only losing your property to collateralized assetization, but you'll also end up on a universal basic income, which is not where you want to be. So that's it for me, the guy in the hat, signing off again for another session. I hope you learned something today. Share this far and wide, and as always, look after your health, look after your wealth, and make good choices.